Hello and welcome to my Viking funeral history project for my MRTS1330 class internship orientation. Our first slide is a burning ship on a body of water because most people, when asked what they picture at a Viking funeral, this is the number one image that comes to mind. It's what came to my mind before doing this project. And the burning ship is really just for high nobility and chieftains. Not every community member got this type of burial. Actually, mound burials were way more common, or burning the ship and burying them in the ashes in a mound burial. And the ship itself is symbolic to the Viking people because it was their main form of travel. It symbolized moving on or moving forward, whether that be to a new country, a new village, or the afterlife. The ship represented a certain social status for the Viking people. If you were fortunate enough to have one built for you or build your own, then you were of higher rank than those who didn't, and you were treated as such. The Viking ship is also a form of power. They asserted their power anywhere they went. They pillaged, they plundered, and they also used this as kind of a scare tactic to the people that they were visiting. If you saw several Viking ships pull up to your shores, you were definitely scared. And that's what they wanted with these. That's why the dragon head, that's why the intimidating size of each ship. Now, the Vikings had a rough life. They were nomadic. They had several different places that they called home in one lifestyle. They were known for their rough and warrior-like appearances and ruggedness. They had a pagan belief system, and it was later, thanks to Olaf Tryggvason, was transformed into Christianity. He forced Christianity on his people in Norway, and then it spread throughout the Viking culture. But they didn't completely give up their pagan beliefs. They kind of let the two coexist within the community. And even after the introduction of Christianity, you still saw the Vikings burying their inanimate objects with the dead, so that way they could take it on with them to the afterlife. And even in their burials, if there was not a ship available to be used for the deceased, they would form a rock formation in the shape of a ship around the deceased. But the grave plot, showing that they were a prominent member in their culture. Now here are some terms that I have come to learn throughout this project, and I'm going to let you know what they are and how to pronounce them. This is the Valhalla, is the Viking afterlife. The Revenant or the Draugr is the spirit. Tumuli is the mound burials, and that's actually plural. The Angel of Death is an older woman who performed the funeral sacrifice. And the Draugr was the Viking spirit, and he or she would come back to torment the living, torment their crops, their livestock, even take whole families with them to the afterlife if their body were not properly taken care of after their passing. The Viking people were very strict and treated their dead as respectfully as possible because they were scared of the Draugr coming back and causing torment to the village. And what exactly happened after the death of a prominent person? First, the deceased body would be taken care of. They would close the eyes, the nostrils, the mouth. They would cover the head with a piece of cloth. Then they would ask for a slave volunteer. The volunteer would then sing happy songs, be proud to help their master in their travel onto the afterlife, or the Valhalla. On day 7 was the Snod. That was a big feast and drinking a funeral ale, and what would happen is they would eat, drink, get full. After the drinking had finished, they would claim their inheritance. Any of the heirs would claim their inheritance. A part of the overall money or goods owned by the deceased would go towards paying for this feast, for these festivities, for the beer. Then the one section of it will be sent into the afterlife with the deceased, and then the rest would be divided among the heirs. That happened on day 7 after the death. On day 10 is when the deceased would be interred or cremated. On day 10, the slave girl who chose to accompany her master to the afterlife would be given much funeral ale. She would go around to all the important members of the community or the chieftains, and she would have sexual relations with them. Upon the end of that, she would go onto the ship itself, and the angel of death would then stab her in the chest. Meanwhile, the attendees of this funeral ritual would bang their swords or sticks onto their shields to block the girl's screams from the other slaves so that they would not be scared to accompany their masters into the afterlife should it happen. After she was stabbed, members of the family would put a rope around her neck, have 2 sides of the rope, and pull in either direction, signifying the end of the funeral ritual. And then she would be laid onto the ship. They would make sure all the other animals and goods were on there. They would all get off of the ship and set it ablaze. And something interesting, the backdrop for this slide is actually a burial site found in Sweden, and you can kind of see the circular motion of the circular formation of these rocks, and that is indeed in the shape of a ship. So you can't really tell if it was a full ship buried there, because historians will not dig that one up, but it's interesting to wonder. This is the largest burial ground found for the Vikings. It was found in Scandinavia. There are over 600 graves in this location. It dates back to the Iron Age and the Viking period. Each circle of rocks represent a man who was well respected within their community, and each rock formation is in the shape of what their Viking ships were. This is a cool discovery called the Oseberg ship. 2 women were found in this ship, buried with it, along with combs, equipment, sleighs, a car, animals, bowls, all kinds of things they would need in their life and in the afterlife. One woman was in her 50s, and historians found that she had had cancer, and another was a young woman. The Vikings did not keep written records, so we don't know the exact story. We can only piece together what we have found, and I think that is very interesting. There's a lot that we can speculate about with these 2 women. Were they political leaders? Were they warriors? Were they just very well respected matriarchs of the villages? The Oseberg was built in 820 AD, and it was buried 14 years later. Now, it was discovered in 1904 in Norway. And this, of course, was a full burial. Several of the burial mounds have just ashes in an urn. Some have the full ship and the full body. There's no real written reason as to why one or the other. Maybe it was convenience. Maybe they didn't have the full ships to go with them. Maybe it was the land. With only these few pieces of evidence can some written records be found. And I feel like this is very important to know for the funeral industry. As a funeral director, you see several different religions and rituals come into your funeral home, and you have to be accommodating and understanding of all of them. Even though there aren't Vikings today, and they definitely do not practice the way that they did back in these days, just understanding how this ritual came to be, why they did it, why they believed this, is very, very good for any funeral director or aspiring funeral director. And these are my references. Thank you very much.